We begin in 1967, in a sunny, high school recess. Two best friends, Kazuki and Watanabe, have a mock sword fight with popsicle sticks, and later a girl with short hair, Naoko, laughs as Kazuki takes the popsicle out of her mouth with his. We continue to see Naoko and Kazuki's closeness as they hug in the middle of a crowded pool and embrace at the zoo. Watanabe, the narrator as well as the protagonist, tells us Kazuki and Naoko have been together almost since birth, and since he was Kazuki's best friend, he joined them to hang out. But Kazuki doesn't leave him out or treats him as a third wheel. He has his own close relationship with Watanabe, always together walking through school, playing pool. But then the peacefulness of the scenes is replaced with tension, when we see a thin hose along the outside of a shiny red car. We follow the hose to see it reach the inside of a car, where Kazuki is meticulously sealing the window. He slowly inserts the key and starts the car. The fumes fill the vehicle, while Kazuki tries to search for a most comfortable position to await his end. After Kazuki perishes, Watanabe feels a void inside him. He moves to Tokyo, and we see his lonely, quiet routine. There's a world going on outside of him. The protests in the streets, the societal movements, only highlight Watanabe's profound feeling of isolation and disconnection from his surroundings. The only thing that appeals to him is reading. But his life still feels empty. He works at a record store, struggles to get up in the morning, swims, and drinks, but he needs more. He asks fellow student Nagasawa if it's true that he's slept with over 300 girls. Nagasawa tells him to go with him next time, believing that seducing girls is easy. He takes Watanabe to a bar, and his influence has the desired effect. We immediately see a girl in bed and entangled in pink silk sheets, while he sits in bed and looks away from her. One day, reading next to a pond, it's strangely quiet. He looks up from his book as if feeling something. He looks around and slowly approaches a lonely girl. It's Naoko, with a shy smile and her hair much longer. He asks her what she's doing in Tokyo. "What am I doing?" she asks, laughing timidly. They walk together, and he tries to catch up, but she's reserved. They stroll in silence in the rich nature surrounding the path, crossing a bridge over a river, getting more lost in the gardens. They share a meal and quiet intimacy, and we know it's the first time of many they'll see each other. Naoko and Watanabe strengthen their bond in silence, in peaceful understanding. Avoiding mentioning the past, and never speaking about Kazuki, just walking in silence, having breakfast together at Naoko's house, then laughing and hugging when trapped outside in a storm. She asks in the dark if she can look, while it rains outside. He surprises with a birthday cake and a present. They toast and drink in the blue rainy afternoon. We see her sharing her thoughts for the first time, talking about life. Turning 20 is stupid, weird, like somebody's pushing her from behind. She gets more emotional as she speaks about how people should just go back and forth between 18 and 19. Her eyes full of tears. Her voice finally breaks. She begins crying, breathing hard with pain. The first reaction of grief we see towards Kazuki. She leans against Watanabe, who embraces her. She gets closer until they kiss, and they lie on the floor together. They continue kissing as she cries. She lies on the floor, looking at him. He undresses with no rush, and they kiss, gently and quietly as all their interactions have been. It's Naoko's first time. Just as they finish, Watanabe asks her directly why she didn't sleep with Kazuki, making her cry again. Regretful and teary, he apologizes for asking, but continues looking at her as she cries, not knowing what to do. In the still gloomy atmosphere, he covers them both with a blanket and they sleep peacefully next to the unfinished cake slices. The next day, Watanabe is dressed and about to leave, and asks her if she can call her, as Naoko is still wrapped in the blanket, sleeping, or pretending to. Next thing we see is Watanabe on the phone. The landlord has told him Naoko has moved away. Stunned and hurt, he writes her a letter, apologizing, and telling her it was probably wrong, what he did on her birthday. But what he felt for her was something he'd never experienced before. He begs her to reply, to at least tell him if he's hurt her or not. Watanabe goes back to his routine, now also taking a demanding job at a factory. He goes back to pursuing one-night stands alongside Nagasawa. We feel the same emptiness and dissociation Naoko had interrupted, as he's in bed with another girl, and works at the factory, with the deceased fishes and ice cubes surrounding him. But one day he comes back home, and finds a note. Naoko apologizes for not writing before, as she wasn't in a state to do so. She's gone back to Kobe and sees a doctor, who's told her to spend time in the outskirts of Kyoto. She thanks him for the time spent together and tells him he's not the one who's hurt her. It was herself who did so. In the cafeteria, a girl with big sunglasses and a confident smirk walks, and asks Watanabe if she can sit with him. She stares at him through her glasses. He asks if they've met before. Turns out they were together in class. He compliments her looks, which amuses her. They have a weird but comfortable talk. He tells her he's been traveling, alone. She asks if he enjoys solitude, since nobody likes being alone that much. He thinks going out and searching for friends only leads to disappointment. They continue talking and she finally introduces herself as Midori. We see them again another day, walking. But the clear difference with Naoko is that they talk easily, less solemnly. She's relaxed and easygoing. She later greets him at her house and puts the flowers he's brought her in water. They eat the meal she cooked and he gets to know her. He asks why her family is not with her on her birthday. She tells him his father was distraught by the loss of his wife, and she admits he told his daughters that he would have rather lost them than their mother. Again, it's raining, and they're drinking and sitting on the floor. They discuss love. They don't agree on the meaning, but they enjoy the conversation. She gets shy suddenly and tells him it's been a long time since she's allowed herself to relax completely. They look at each other, starting to lean closer, and after a short moment, they kiss. By their expressions, they're thinking of something, not fully involved with the kiss. After all, she's dating someone else and he's also in love with someone else. They're at peace with each other's feelings. They meet at a record store another moment and they seduce each other in silence. She walks around knowing he's looking at her. Another day, Watanabe receives a letter and he reads it eagerly. Naoko is reconnecting with people again. But she wants him, only him. Again in the immensity of the mountain, the woods, Watanabe hikes alone. But towards the companionship he longs for, he is greeted by a friend of Naoko's, Ryoko. She is a music teacher, as well as a patient in a mental health institution. She leads him to the room he'll be staying in and informs him he won't be allowed to be alone with Naoko. Watanabe sits next to a window and thinks of Kazuki, back when they were in high school. Later, he awakens with Naoko's face just a few inches from his. She tells him she's not supposed to be there and she doesn't have much time. The light is warm as they look at each other in peace. He asks how long she's been in the institution, but her only response is pulling her face close to his. And she thanks him for coming, but she assures him that he can confide in her if he no longer wants to remain in this place. He touches her face just for a few moments, then, it's time for her to go. At dinner, Ryoko plays the guitar and sings Norwegian Wood as they lay next to each other. Naoko is lost in her thoughts and begins to cry. Ryoko embraces her and asks Watanabe to leave for a walk. He obeys and goes into the dark, cold woods. He comes back but Ryoko and Naoko have already left. Naoko visits him again in secret. They carefully come close, and she kisses him, but suddenly stops. Again they kiss, and she moves forward with the intimacy. But again she stops and looks at him, and asks him if she loves her. He does, and so she guides him to touch her and he finally seems to relax. But she abruptly cuts the kiss again, and leaves him. She then wakes him at dawn, saying she needs to talk to him. They walk through the woods and along the country, far from the housing. She asks him if he remembers when he asked her why she didn't sleep with Kazuki. She confesses they tried, but couldn't do it. She loved him, but couldn't let him get close physically. And he was the same. She wishes she didn't have to talk about it, but she needs to. She needs to figure it out. And she can't do it alone. Restless, she asks him about the time they slept together. She tells him bluntly how she enjoyed it and has been thinking about it nonstop, which puzzles her. She wonders why that wasn't the case with Kazuki, someone she loved. This is when Watanabe asks if she loves him too. Unfortunately, Naoko can only apologize. According to her, she and Kazuki had a very special relationship since they were together since the age of 3. They talked about everything and were each other's first kiss. She had gone to him, instead of her parents, when she had her first period. She starts crying, and then screams, while bringing up Kazuki's passing for the first time. She says after he perished, she realized she didn't know how to relate to other people. She didn't even know what it meant to love someone. She runs desperately through the grass, tripping and screaming. At first, Watanabe is too shocked to go after her, but he catches up to her and hugs her tight. He brings her back to the institution, where Ryoko is waiting, worried sick about her. She asks them what they were doing, urging a confession. Naoko lies instead and tells her they did it, but it didn't work because Watanabe was too big for her, and it didn't fit. Watanabe shakes his head and they start laughing. He's confused. Naoko explains that it was a dream Ryoko had before he got there. As they laugh and while he's feeling left out, Ryoko reminds him that the people in that place are not normal, and they are no exception. At a different time, they meet again, but this time they're talking naturally. She asks him if he can wait for her to be intimate again, reassuring him they can do other things. She touches him out in the open, while the wind is blowing. He looks around, a bit self-conscious, but then starts enjoying it. On a different day, they're out again. He embraces her and kisses her head as she smiles. Then on another day, they are in each other's arms, kissing. In another scene, Watanabe is in the pool again, now with Midori. She notices his head is somewhere else. He tells her he's tired from his traveling. They sit in silence until she asks him if he knows what she's thinking. In the middle of the pool full of people, she tells him she wants him. They meet in the hallways at Watanabe's residence. They laugh and chat with ease. He's comfortable enough to ask her straightforward questions. She then leads him through a hospital to a room. She leans on a bed, and we learn the man lying there is her dad. She then walks out of the room to talk to a nurse, leaving Watanabe alone with him. The days continue. Watanabe works, walks, and his life seems empty again, filled with silence. He suddenly picks up the phone in the middle of the night. He finds out Midori's father has passed away. when he asks her if there is anything he can do. She only called to inform him of the news, but she doesn't not want him to come to the funeral. She hates funerals. He listens to her on the phone as she cries. While weeping, Midori asks him if he'll take her to see a really dirty film, which is an odd topic to bring up by someone grieving. She also asks him if he'd visit her if she went to Uruguay. Midori tells him how she thinks they would have had lots of healthy babies there, and he agrees with her. After this, she thanks him for his kindness and hangs up. In the next scene, Watanabe is quietly reading, feeling satisfied, when he receives a phone call. Later, we see him arrive at a bar to meet Midori. He asks her about the funeral. She changes the topic, telling him she decided to take her boyfriend on a trip, where they had a fight, and haven't seen each other since. Ever since, she's been traveling alone. Midori admits thinking of Watanabe often, and she confesses she likes him. He doesn't reciprocate, pointing out that she has a boyfriend. She asks him if he can tell what she wants to do right at that moment. Swiftly, she gets up and leaves him alone. The phone rings again, this time at Midori's house, but she doesn't answer. In the next scene, he's with Naoko again, next to a stream. She asks him if he's seeing someone. He says no. Back home, we see him again on the phone, getting no reply. Naoko writes him letters. She tells him about her life and tells him he's good for her. Watanabe picks at an injury he has on his hand, one caused by a work accident. Even if it hurts him, he continues to hurt until he bleeds. Some time later, Naoko wishes him a happy 20th birthday. She believes her 20s will probably end miserably, so he should be grateful. She sends him a scarf she knitted with Ryuko. He wears it to bed. She also asks him to visit her whenever it starts to snow. The next scene shows them running across snow to embrace each other. Ryuko walks up to them, smiling, but they are only fixated on each other. They kiss and are about to sleep together again, but she tells him to stop. They remain together in bed until they start dressing up. She suddenly asks him why he cares for her, and tells him he shouldn't be involved with her, a statement that Watanabe quickly refutes. While disagreeing with her, she raises her voice and asks him to leave her alone. She thinks it's what he should have done on her birthday. She then has a breakdown, so he doesn't hesitate to hold her and calm her down. She screams, mentioning how his presence is painful, but finally gives into the hug. In the snowy fields, he smiles at her and asks her if she would like to come live with him. She thanks him, as hearing this offer makes her happy, but doesn't give an answer. Watanabe says she shouldn't stay in the institution for long. He will move soon, and she should join him. She changes the subject, wondering why she can't be intimate with him again, and he tells her to give it time and not to worry. She then questions him, asking him what if she can never make love. Will he still love her by then? They lie together on the snow, alone together, far away from everything. They kiss goodbye and he informs her he will come back before moving, asking her to think about his offer. Ryuko arrives there too, and she smiles at her. But Naoko doesn't acknowledge her. She's looking at Watanabe walking away from her, as if she wanted to follow him, run to him. But instead she cries in silence. Next, Watanabe prepares to leave the dorm, and says goodbye to Nagasawa. He receives a letter, this time from Ryuko. He finds out Naoko is hearing voices again and can't hold conversations normally, so she doesn't want Watanabe to see her in that state. At his college campus, Watanabe approaches Midori, who brushes him off. Eventually, Naoko's condition gets worse. She is shunning herself from the world, running away. And she is having hallucinations, looking for Kazuki desperately around her. Ryuko keeps trying to take care of her, but it's getting harder to do so. For the first time, we hear Watanabe acknowledge Kazuki's passing, talking to him as if he can hear him. He blames him for choosing demise, condemning Naoko. But he tells him he'll persist, become stronger, for her. He won't abandon Naoko like he did. At the college cafeteria, Midori approaches Watanabe. She just sits with him, shakes his hand, and tells him to leave together. In the silent, snowy, peaceful courtyard, she tells him she's broken up with her boyfriend after the night they hung out at the bar and left him alone. He confesses his affection for her, but explains he can't do anything at the moment. She asks if it's because of Naoko. She continues to ask him about Naoko, finally asking if she's in love with him. Watanabe is silent for a few seconds, and then mentions how things are complicated. However, he's sure he can't abandon her, even if she doesn't love him. He admits he needs time, and apologizes. After a moment of silence, Midori promises that she'll wait for him, expressing her trust. She makes him promise that if he ever decides to love her, she wants to be his only love, explaining how she doesn't want to be hurt again. They end the conversation with a hug. But then, we see the terrible image of legs from a tree, meaning someone committed the unthinkable. Watanabe cries on a rock, next to the ocean, heartbroken and distraught. The weather is stormy and the waves crash near him. Later, he camps alone in a cave. The waves get dangerously near him, but he remains in his cave, aching and thinking of Naoko, haunted by her loss. Finally, the sea calms down, and he sleeps on a rock. At this point, he believes nothing can cure the sorrow of losing a loved one. For him, no truth, no sincerity, no kindness can eliminate that sorrow. Watanabe goes back to the city, wearing the scarf Naoko made for him. He climbs up the stairs to his apartment, tired and defeated. He stops when he sees Midori at the door, waiting for him. She greets him in tears. When she asks him if he was planning to live there with Naoko, he doesn't answer. She waits for him, doubtful, while he showers. They share a meal in silence. He's numb and lost in his thoughts. He suddenly remembers a time when Naoko asks him to remember her. Midori and Watanabe are sitting on the bed. She cries, but he doesn't acknowledge her. They finally share a moment. He looks calm, better. They talk about her plans. She is moving to study music in another city. She seems hopeful, although not enthusiastic. Watanabe encourages her to go and find love. She suddenly asks him to sleep with her. Watanabe has to ask her if she's serious several times, since Midori always enjoys a dirty joke, but they eventually end up making love. Their intercourse seems more meaningful, more sentimental. In the next scene, Watanabe carries her bags to walk her to the train station. She insists she doesn't need him to accompany her. They have a simple, heartfelt goodbye, where Midori asks one final thing of him, which is to try to be happy for her and Naoko. And thus, Watanabe is left alone. We see him one last time, calling her phone. He tells her he wants to see her and thank her, confessing that he loves her and she's the only person he wants, a statement that makes her smile. Watanabe narrates at the end of the movie how every day he's stepping farther away from the end. Kazuki remains 17. Naoko will remain 20 for all eternity. But as for him, he survived the sorrow and found meaning in living.